Hamilton, an American musical. The first act of the genre-smashing musical, with Black and Latino actors playing the Founding Fathers, takes Alexander Hamilton through the Revolutionary War, where he was the right-hand man of George Washington and the husband of Eliza Schuyler. The second act shifts to Hamilton's tumultuous political and personal lives as a rival to Thomas Jefferson and longtime friend Aaron Burr. The musical's tagline is "The Story of America Then, Told by America Now," which encapsulates its dramatization of the events leading up to the American Revolution, using contemporary music and a cast as diverse as the current population of the United States. Let's explore Hamilton now.
Hamilton in 60, The Immigrant. Alexander Hamilton was born to unmarried parents in the British West Indies. Because his parents were unmarried, the Church of England would not allow him to attend their school. A tutor and the family library of 34 books provided Hamilton's education. Hamilton's father abandoned the family, and shortly after, his mother died. All that was left to him was the family library. August 30th, 1772, a hurricane devastated the island. Hamilton wrote a sweeping account of the storm. Local businessmen were so impressed with his writing that they paid for his passage to America to get an education. The 17-year-old immigrant student wrote one of his first political writings in response to Samuel Seabury's pamphlet attacking Congress. This resulted in a verbal battle by pamphlet between Seabury and Hamilton. Hamilton ends his final argument by saying, "I consider civil liberty in a genuine, unadulterated sense as the greatest of terrestrial blessings." Hamilton in 60, The Politician. In 1783, Alexander Hamilton retired from the military and began his life as a politician. Discouraged by the state of the central government, he petitioned to revise the Articles of Confederation. His writing contained aspects of the future U.S. Constitution, such as a strong federal government that has the power to collect taxes and build an army. The Federalist Papers urged the ratification of the U.S. Constitution and were sent as letters to newspapers under the pseudonym Publius. As one of the writers, Hamilton contributed 51 of the 85 essays that are still used to interpret the Constitution. Hamilton in 60, the Secretary of the Treasury. In 1789, George Washington became the first U.S. president. The Revolutionary War had left the United States bankrupt. Washington appointed Alexander Hamilton the first Secretary of the Treasury.
Alexander Hamilton consolidated the debt. He really established the foundation for how the country was going to fund itself going forward.
Madison, Jefferson, and Attorney General Edmund Randolph objected to Hamilton's plan for a national bank. But Hamilton was able to convince President Washington to back his plan.
It's a foundation for commerce, for how companies could borrow money, how the country could borrow money. And he established the basic premise for the financial network that exists today within the U.S.
So what was Hamilton's financial plan? So after the Revolutionary War and then the founding of the new country, there was a huge problem facing the new government, and that was economics. So Hamilton, the newly appointed Secretary of the Treasury, was tasked to deal with three major areas. His plan focused on, one, public credit. So as a result of the revolution, the federal government had a huge debt, $54 million, including interest. The states owed another $25 million. Paper money issued under the Continental Congress and the Articles of Confederation was worthless, and they weren't able to get money from foreign countries. The second area that he proposed was creating a Bank of the United States. This bank was modeled along the lines of the Bank of England, in which a central bank would make the new nation's economy dynamic through a more stable paper currency that would be for the whole country. And then the third area is he wanted to make American manufacturers self-sufficient. Up until this point, the American economy was traditionally an agricultural society, and our economy rested on agricultural exports, such as cotton and tobacco and other things that are grown. That money that was made from those exports, things being sent out, would then be used to pay for the import or the bringing in of British manufactured goods like clothes and furniture. So these are the three areas that Hamilton's financial plan focused on. So what were the results of Hamilton's financial plan? With public credit, well, for 6 months there was a bitter debate until Madison and Jefferson engineered a compromise. In exchange for the Southern votes, Hamilton promised to support locating the national capital on the banks of the Potomac River, the border between two southern states, Virginia and Maryland. We know that today as Washington, D.C. With the Bank of the United States, Congress passed a bill that created a national bank for a term of 20 years, but it left the question of the bank's constitutionality up to the President Washington. The president reluctantly decided to sign the measure, and believing that the bank was necessary for the nation's well-being. With manufacturers being self-sufficient, Hamilton proposed to aid the nation's infant industries through high tariffs designed to protect American industry from foreign competition, government subsidies to businesses, and government-financed transportation improvements. He hoped that that would break Britain's manufacturing hold on America. The most vocal in opposition to Hamilton's proposals came from Thomas Jefferson. You're now going to watch Cabinet Battle Number 1, Act 2, Song 2. The participants in this are President George Washington, Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson, Secretary of the Treasury Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison. You are going to first listen to the song with pictures from the rap battle. Then we will move on.
Ladies and gentlemen, you could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but you're here with us in New York City. Are you ready for a cabinet meeting, huh? The issue on the table: Secretary Hamilton's plan to assume state debt and establish a national bank. Secretary Jefferson, you have the floor, sir.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We fought for these ideals, we shouldn't settle for less. These are wise words, enterprising men quote them. Don't act surprised, you guys, cause I wrote them. Ow, but Hamilton forgets his plan would have the government assume state's debts. Now place your bets as to who that benefits. The very seat of government where Hamilton sits.
Not true.
Oh, if the shoe fits, wear it. If New York's in debt, why should Virginia bear it? Our debts are paid, I'm afraid. Don't tax the South, cause we got it made in the shade. In Virginia, we plant seeds in the ground. We create, you just wanna move our money around. This financial plan is an outrageous demand, and it's too many damn pages for any man to understand. Stand with me in the land of the free. Pray to God we never see Hamilton's candidacy. Look, when Britain taxed our tea, we got frisky. Imagine what gon' happen when you try to tax our whiskey.
Thank you, Secretary Jefferson. Secretary Hamilton, your response. Thomas, that was a real nice declaration. Welcome to the present, we're running a real nation. Would you like to join us or stay mellow, doing whatever the hell it is you do in Monticello? If we assume the debts the union gets, a new line of credit, a financial diuretic, how do you not get it? If we're aggressive and competitive, the union gets a boost, you'd rather give it a sedative? A civics lesson from a slaver. Hey neighbor, your debts are paid cause you don't pay for labor. We plant seeds in the South, we create, they keep ranting. We know who's really doing the planting. And another thing, Mr. Age of Enlightenment, don't lecture me about the war, you didn't fight in it. You think I'm frightened of you, man? We almost died in the trench while you were off getting high with the French. Thomas Jefferson always hesitant with the president, reticent. There isn't a plan he doesn't jettison. Madison, you mad as a Haddison, take taking medicine. Damn, you in worse shape than the national debt is in. Sitting there useless as two shits. Hey, turn around, bend over, I'll show you where my shoe fits. Excuse me. Madison, Jefferson, take a walk. Hamilton, take a walk. We're gonna reconvene after a brief recess. Hamilton, sir, a word.
You don't have the votes.
You don't have the votes.
You're gonna need congressional approval, and you don't have the votes.
Such a blunder, sometimes it makes me wonder why I even bring the thunder.
Why he even brings the thunder?
You wanna pull yourself together? I'm sorry, these Virginians are birds of a feather.
Young man, I'm from Virginia, so watch your mouth.
So we let Congress get held hostage by the South?
You need the votes.
No, we need bold strokes. We need this
No,
plan.
you need to convince more folks.
Well, James Madison won't talk to me. That's a non-starter.
Winning was easy, young man. Governing's hard.
They're being intransigent.
You have to find a compromise.
But they don't have a plan. They just hate mine.
Convince them otherwise.
And what happens if I don't get congressional approval?
I imagine they'll call for your removal.
Sir,
Figure it out, Alexander. That's an order from your commander.
Now you're going to watch a spoken word version by the actors in the East Wing of the White House.
The issue on the table, Secretary Hamilton's plan to assume state debt and establish a national bank. Secretary Jefferson, you have the floor, sir.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We fought for these ideals. We shouldn't settle for less. These are wise words. Enterprising men quote them. Don't act surprised, you guys, because I wrote them. But Hamilton forgets his plan would have the government assume states' debts. Right. Now, place your bets as to who that benefits, the very seat of government where Hamilton sits.
Not true.
Ooh, if the shoe fits, wear it. If New York's in debt, why should Virginia bear it? Our debts are paid. I'm afraid. Don't tax the South because we got it made in the shade. In Virginia, we plant seeds in the ground. We create. You just want to move our money around. This financial plan is an outrageous demand and it's too many damn pages for any man to understand. Stand with me in the land of the free. Pray to God we never see Hamilton's candidacy. Look, when Britain taxed our tea, we got frisky. Imagine what's gonna happen when you try to tax our whiskey.
Thank you, Secretary Jefferson. Secretary Hamilton,
Thomas,
your response.
Thomas, that was a real nice declaration. Welcome to the present. We're running a real nation. Would you like to join us or stay mellow doing whatever the hell it is you do in Monticello? If we assume the debts, the union gets a new line of credit, a financial diuretic. How do you not get it? If we're aggressive and competitive, the union gets a boost. You'd rather give it a sedative? A civics lesson from a slaver. Hey, neighbor, your debts are paid because you don't pay for labor. We plant seeds in the South. We create. Yeah, keep ranting. We know who's really doing the planting. And another thing, Mr. Age of Enlightenment, don't lecture me about the war. You didn't fight in it. You think I'm frightened of you, man? We almost died in a trench while you were off getting high with the French. That is Thomas Jefferson, always hesitant with the president, reticent. There isn't a plan, he wasn't jettisoned. Madison, you Madison, take your medicine. Damn, you're in worse shape than the national debt is it? Sitting there useless as two shits. Hey, turn around, bend over, I'll show you where my shoe is.
Excuse me, Madison, Jefferson, take a walk. Hamilton, take a walk. We'll reconvene after a brief recess. Hamilton, a word.
You don't have the votes.
You don't have the votes.
You're gonna need congressional approval, and you don't have the votes.
Such a blunder. Sometimes it makes me wonder why I even bring the thunder.
Why he even brings the thunder.
Pull yourself together.
I'm sorry, these Virginians are birds of a feather.
Man, I'm from Virginia, so watch your mouth.
So we let Congress get held hostage by the South.
You need the votes.
No, we need bold strokes. We need this
No,
plan.
you need to convince more folks.
Well, James Madison won't talk to me. That's a non-starter.
Winning was easy, young man. Governing's harder.
They're being intransigent.
You have to find a compromise.
But they don't have a plan. They just hate money.
Convince them otherwise.
Then what happens if I don't get congressional approval?
I imagine they'll call for your removal.
Sir,
Figure it out, Alexander. That's an order from your commander.
yes, sir. Good luck with the lotto.
Lastly, here are the lyrics to the song Cabinet Battle Number 1, sung by the original Broadway cast. I hope you learned a little something today about our founding father, Alexander Hamilton, and continue to want to learn about history.
Ladies and gentlemen,
You could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but you're here with us in New York City. Are you ready for a cabinet meeting, huh? The issue on the table. Secretary Hamilton's plan to assume state debt and establish a national bank. Secretary Jefferson, you have the floor, sir.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We fought for these ideals, we shouldn't settle for less. These are wise words, enterprising men quote them. Don't act surprised, you guys, cause I wrote them. Ow, but Hamilton forgets. His plan would have the government assume state debts. Now place your bets as to who that benefits. The very seat of government where Hamilton sits.
Not true.
Oh, if the shoe fits, wear it. If New York's in debt, why should Virginia bear it? Our debts are paid, I'm afraid. Don't tax the South, cause we got it made in the shade. In Virginia, we plant seeds in the ground. We create, you just wanna move our money around. This financial plan is an outrageous demand, and it's too many damn pages for any man to understand. Stand with me in the land of the free. Pray to God we never see Hamilton's candidacy. Look, when Britain taxed our tea, we got frisky. Imagine what gon' happen when you try to tax our whiskey.
Thank you, Secretary Jefferson. Secretary Hamilton, your response. Thomas, that was a real nice declaration. Welcome to the present, we're running a real nation. Would you like to join us? Or stay mellow, doing whatever the hell it is you do in Monticello? If we assume the debts the union gets, a new line of credit, a financial diuretic, how do you not get it? If we're aggressive and competitive, the union gets a boost, you'd rather give it a sedative? A civics lesson from a slaver. Hey neighbor, your debts are paid cause you don't pay for labor. We plant seeds in the South, we create, they keep ranting. We know who's really doing the planting. And another thing, Mr. Age of Enlightenment, don't lecture me about the war, you didn't fight in it. You think I'm frightened of you, man? We almost died in the trench while you were off getting high with the French. Thomas Jefferson always hesitant with the president, reticent. There isn't a plan he doesn't jettison. Madison, you mad as a hatter, so take your medicine. Damn, you in worse shape than the national debt is in. Sitting there useless as two shits. Hey, turn around, bend over, I'll show you where my shoe fits. Excuse me. Madison, Jefferson, take a walk. Hamilton, take a walk. We're gonna reconvene after a brief recess. Hamilton, sir, a word.
You don't have the votes.
You don't have the votes.
You're gonna need congressional approval, and you don't have the votes.
Such a blunder, sometimes it makes me wonder why I even bring the thunder.
Why he even brings the thunder?
You want to pull yourself together? I'm sorry, these Virginians are birds of a feather. Young man, I'm from Virginia, so watch your mouth. So we let Congress get held hostage by the South?
You need the votes.
No, we need bold strokes. We need this plan.
No, you need to convince more folks.
Well, James Madison won't talk to me. That's a non-starter.
Winning was easy, young man. Governing's hard.
They're being intransigent.
You have to find a compromise.
But they don't have a plan. They just hate mine.
Convince them otherwise.
And what happens if I don't get congressional approval?
I imagine they'll call for your removal.
Sir.
Figure it out, Alexander. That's an order from your commander.
Hello. Today, we're going to focus on personal essays and memoir writing. When we talk about personal essays and memoirs, a lot of times, especially if you're talking to your high school English teacher or your guidance counselor, we're trying to talk to you about the importance of the college essay. And that is true. It just is. College essays are very, very important. But one of the things that I want to point out is that college essays, you'll only write maybe once, maybe twice if you decide to go to grad school, and they have a really specific audience, right? You're trying to perform for the college admissions panel and show them aspects of yourself that let yourself shine. But when we talk about personal essays and memoirs, there is so much more to them than just the college essay. And today we want to talk about the everything else, right? We're going to leave the college essay part for your guidance counselor and your high school English teacher. And today we're going to talk about everything else. There's so much more than the college essay. So personal essays and memoirs are depictions of personal experiences. They are true stories from your life. There's one key difference between personal essays and memoirs. A personal essay is told from a contemporary perspective. That means with all of the wisdom and information and knowledge that you have now, you write about the past from the perspective of your current self. But memoirs are told from the perspective of memory, as though you are reliving or living that memory for the first time. So let's look at some examples of some great memoirs or personal essays. Here's some great examples of memoirs and personal essays. One really great example is Night by Elie Wiesel. So Night is really commonly taught in about 8th, 9th grade, and it is the story of Elie Wiesel and his experiences in concentration camps during the Holocaust in Eastern Europe during World War II. Another is Woman Warrior by Maxine Hung Kingston, which is a memoir about growing up as the child of immigrants in America. And Maxine Hung Kingston talks about kind of reconciling Chinese culture and her relationship with her mother, with American culture, and kind of living in both worlds as she grows up. Another important, really poignant personal essay to read or take a look at is Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which he writes from the perspective of himself as a father, writing to his teenage son about how he discovered and came to understand the relationship between race and power in America and what that means for people today. And then finally, I highly encourage you to take a look at Farewell to Manzanar by Jean Wakatsuki, which is a memoir of her time in Japanese internment camps, which happened in the United States during World War II. Today, though, we're going to take a look at a shorter memoir, which is called More Room by Judith Ortiz Cofer. Judith Ortiz Cofer was born in Puerto Rico and moved as a child to New Jersey. She wrote several poems and essays and books, including a memoir called Silent Dancing in 1990, where the essay More Room can be found. And we're going to read this, where I want you to read to see how does Ortiz Cofer transform her memories through the eyes of her childhood self. Judith Ortiz Cofer, More Room. My grandmother's house is like a chambered nautilus. It has many rooms, yet it is not a mansion. Its proportions are small and its design simple. It is a house that has grown organically according to the needs of its inhabitants. To all of us in the family, it is known as La Casa de Mama. It is the place of our origin, the stage of our memories and dreams of island life. I remember how in my childhood it sat on stilts, this way before it had a downstairs. It rested on its perch like a great blue bird, not a flying sort of bird, more like a nesting hen, but with spread wings. Grandfather had built it soon after their marriage. He was a painter and house builder by trade, a poet and meditative man by nature. As each of their 8 children were born, new rooms were added. After a few years, the paint did not exactly match, not the materials. So there was a chronology to it, like the rings of a tree. And Mama could tell you the history of each room in her casa, and thus the genealogy of the family along with it. Her room is the heart of the house. Though I have seen it recently, and both woman and room have diminished in size, changed by the new perspective of my eyes, not capable of looking over countertops and tall beds, it is not this picture I carry in memory of Mama's casa. Instead, I see her room like a queen's chamber, where a small woman loomed large. A throne room with a massive 4-poster bed in its center, which stood taller than a child's head. It was on this bed where her own children had been born that the smallest grandchildren were allowed to take naps in the afternoon. Here, too, was where Mama secluded herself to dispense private advice to her daughters, sitting on the edge of the bed, looking down at whoever sat in the rocker, where generations of babies had been sung to sleep. To me, she looked like a wise empress right out of the fairy tales I was addicted to reading. Though the room was dominated by the mahogany 4 posters, it also contained all of Mama's symbols of power. On her dresser, instead of cosmetics, there were jars of herbs, herba buena, herba mala, the making of purgatives and teas that we were subjected We were all subjected during childhood cries. She had a steaming cup for anyone who could not or would not get up to face life on any given day. If the acrid aftertaste of her cures for malingering did not get you out of bed, then it was time to call the doctor. And there was the monster chifforobe she kept locked with a golden key she did not hide. This was a test of her dominion over us. Though my cousins and I wanted to look inside that massive wardrobe more than anything, we never reached out for that little key lying on top of her Bible in the dresser. This was also where she placed her earrings and rosary at night. God's word was her security system. The chifforobe was the place where I imagined she kept jewels, satin slippers, and elegant sequined silk gowns of heartbreaking fineness. I lusted after those imaginary costumes. I had heard that Mama had been a great beauty in her youth, the belle of many balls. My cousins had other ideas as to what she kept hidden in that wooden vault. Its secret could be money. Mama did not hand cash to strangers. Banks were out of the question. So there were stories that her mattress was stuffed with dollar bills and that she buried coins in jars in her garden under rose bushes or kept them in her inviolable chifforobe. There might be that legendary gun salvaged from the Spanish-American conflict over the island. We went wild over suspected treasures that we made up simply because children have to fill locked trunks with something wonderful. On the wall above the bed hung a heavy silver crucifix. Christ's agonized head hung directly over Mama's pillow. I avoided looking at this weapon suspended over where her head would lay, and on rare occasions when I was allowed to sleep on that bed, I scooted down to the safe middle of the mattress where her body's impression took me in like a mother's lap. Having taken care of the obligatory religious decoration with a crucifix, Mama covered the other walls with objects sent to her over the years by her children in the state. Los Nuevos Señores were represented by, among other things, a postcard from Niagara Falls from her son Herman, postmarked Buffalo, New York. In a conspicuous gold frame hung a large color photograph of her daughter, Nina, her husband, and their 5 children at the entrance to Disneyland in California. From us, she had gotten a black lace fan. Father had brought it to her from a tour of duty with the Navy in Europe. On Sundays, she would remove it from its hook on the wall and fan herself at Sunday Mass. Each year, more items were added as the family grew and dispersed. Every object in the room had a story attached to it, a cuento, which Mama would bestow on anyone who received the privilege of a day alone with her. It was almost worth pretending to be sick, though the bitter purgatives of the body were a price to pay for the spirit revivals of her storytelling. Mama slept alone on her large bed, except for the times when a sick grandchild warranted the privilege or when a heartbroken daughter came home in need of more than herbal teas. In the family, there is a story about how this came to be. When one of the daughters, my mother or one of her sisters, tells the cuento of how Mama came to her own nights, it is usually preceded by the qualifications that Papa's exile from his wife's room was not a result of animosity between the couple, but the act had been Mama's famous bloodless coup for her personal freedom. Papa was the benevolent dictator of her body and her life, who had to be banished from her bed so that Mama could better serve her family. Before telling, we had to agree that the old man was not to blame. We all recognized that in the family, Papa was as an alma de Dios, a saintly, a soft-spoken presence whose main pleasures in life, such as writing poetry and reading the Spanish large-type edition of Reader's Digest, always took place outside the vortex of Mama's crowded realm. It was not his fault, after all, that every year or so he planted a baby seed in Mama's fertile body, keeping her from leading the active life she needed and desired. He loved her and the babies. Papa composed odes and lyrics to celebrate births and anniversaries and hired musicians to accompany him in signing them to his family and friends at extravagant pig roasts he threw yearly. Mama and the oldest girls worked for days preparing the food. Papa sat for hours at his painter's shed, also his study and library comprising the songs. At these celebrations, he was known to give long speeches in praise of God, his fecund wife, and his beloved island. As a middle child, my mother remembers these occasions as a time when the women sat in the kitchen and lamented their burdens, while the men feasted out in the patio, their rum-thickened voices voice rising in song and praise for each other's compañeros all. It was after the birth of her 8th child, after she had lost 3 at birth or in infancy, that Mama made her decision. They say that Mama had a special way of letting her husband know that they were expecting one that had begun when at the beginning of their marriage he had built her a house too confining for her taste. So when she discovered her first pregnancy, she supposedly drew plans for another room, which he dutifully executed. Every time a child was due, she would demand, "More space, more space." Papa acceded to her wishes child after child, since he had learned early that Mama's renowned temper was a thing that grew like a monster along with a new belly. In this way, Mama got the house she wanted, but with each child she lost in heart and energy. She had knowledge of her body and perceived that if she had any more children, her dreams and her plans would have to be permanently forgotten, because she would be a chronically ill woman like Flora with her 12 children, asthma, no teeth, in bed more than on her feet. And so, after my youngest uncle was born, she asked Papa to build a large room at the back of the house. He did so in joyful anticipation. Mama had asked him special things this time: shelves on the walls, a private entrance. He thought she meant this room to be a nursery where several children could sleep. He thought it was a wonderful idea. He painted it his favorite color, sky blue, and made large windows looking out over a green hill and the church spires beyond. But nothing happened. Mama's belly did not grow. Yet she seemed in a frenzy of activity over the house. Finally, an anxious Papa approached his wife to tell her that the new room was finished and ready to be occupied. And Mama, they say, replied, "Good, it's for you." And so that was how Mama discovered the only means of birth control available to a Catholic woman of her time: sacrifice. She gave up the comfort of Papa's love for something she deemed great: the right to own and control her body, so she might live to meet her grandchildren, me among them, so that she could give more of herself to the ones already there, so that she could be more than a channel for others' lives, so that even now that time has robbed her of the elasticity of her body and of her amazing reservoir of energy, she still emanates the kind of joy that can only be achieved by living according to the dictates of one's own heart. So what did you think? Was Ortiz Cofer's writing effective? And why? So let's think about some powerful aspects of memoir and narrative that I think that Ortiz Cofer did really well and that make a memoir or a narrative really great. The first is transporting the reader in time and space, and Ortiz Cofer does a wonderful job of that. We are transported to her grandmother's home in Puerto Rico, and we can kind of see it, right, as this house that starts out really small, and then with each child gets larger and larger and larger. And she describes it as a nautilus, right, which is a shell that has this kind of spiral look to it. And she talks about it as like the rings of a tree, right? So transporting the reader in time and space is something that Ortiz Cofer does really, really well. Presents personal and compelling stories that make the reader consider the world differently. I think that Ortiz Cofer's story does a really great job of this, because we're thinking about the idea of her grandmother just kind of wanting power and control over herself, loving her children and loving her husband, but then deciding that she could do something for herself to take control over her own destiny and her own life, which for her didn't include having any more children. Give space for the writer to express thoughts and feelings about their lives, histories, and cultures. It's clear that this story and these experiences with her grandmother are very important to Ortiz Cofer, and they're a part of her life and growing up that she wanted to share. And finally, bring people together through the power of true storytelling. These stories that Ortiz Cofer tells bring together not just her family, but all kinds of people. You can think about the different types of people that could connect to this story, right? Anyone with a grandmother, anyone with a set of grandparents, anyone with many siblings, right? Lots and lots of siblings or children, someone who has Puerto Rican heritage, someone who lives between two cultures, right? Someone who might have a home in one place and a home in another. So these are some powerful aspects of great memoir and narrative that you want to consider. And I think Ortiz-Cofer does all of these things really well. So if you are going to go out there and write your own narrative or personal essay or memoir, here are some things that I want you to consider. The first is focus on detail. Ortiz-Cofer's story could have been very, very short, but she takes time in the beginning of her memoir to establish this idea of her grandmother as this queen, this powerful woman sitting on her throne, sitting in her bedroom on her four-poster bed, and she kind of gives you these details of her experiences as a child and her perception as a child, right? And so focusing on those details, you doing the same thing, setting up your perspective by giving rich, important details and information about the story that you're about to tell can make good writing great, right? And then all 5 senses, okay? Not just how something looks, but think about how you can incorporate all 5 senses into your writing. Think about taste. Ortiz-Cofer talks to us about the purgatives, right? The herbal teas that her grandmother would give her so that she would not be sick anymore, and how terrible they tasted, right? Think about smell, think about look, think about feel, think about temperature, all of those things. Like, think about all 5 senses when you're writing a memoir to bring the reader into the experience. Connect it to a larger idea. Ortiz-Cofer connects the idea of her grandmother and what her grandmother did to the necessity of women controlling their own destinies, their own bodies, right? So when you connect the story to a larger idea, you can communicate something very, very powerful about the world and about life. And finally, this one is a little nitpicky. This is the grammar person in me that doesn't come out very often, but she's going to say, watch your verb tense. If you're talking about something in the present tense, you can't move back and forth between present and past and present and past. Pick a verb tense and stick to it. You can choose to tell from the perspective of memory so that you're living it, which would mean you would write in the present tense, or you could choose to write a personal essay that talks about the past, and that means that you would use past tense verbs. So make sure that you pay attention to the verb tense and that it's doing what you want, but also that it's consistent throughout.
I'm Singaram Murugappan, a math teacher from Access High School. In our previous segment, we had seen a real-world problem that can be modeled using linear functions. Today, let us explore more about the characteristics of linear functions. It will help us to understand the connection between the real-world scenarios and the mathematical terms better and solve those problems more efficiently. We already know that a linear function can be represented using an algebraic rule. For example, f of x is equal to 2x plus 3. This 2x plus 3 is an algebraic expression used to represent the function f of x. A set of table values. Let us see how we could create values of table from the function. So I have 2 columns, one for x, the other one is for fx. The x is actually your independent variable. In this case, you could put any possible values for x. It could be any real number, but I'm going to use, for simplicity, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 for x. So if you plug in 0 for x, it is 2 times 0 plus 3, which is 0 plus 3, that is 3. So if you plug in 1, it is 2 times 1 plus 3, which is 2 plus 3 and 5. Then if you put 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 plus 3 is 7. With the 3, 2 times 3, 6, 6 plus 3 is 9. 4 times 2, 8, 8 plus 3, 11. Also, we could use these values as ordered pairs, and we could use a set of ordered pairs to represent the same function, which is 0, 3, 1, 5, 2, 7, 3, 9, 4, 11, and so on. And lastly, we could also draw a graph. So we could use these. Let me show that. So a graph, the x-axis takes the input values x, and the y-axis take the output values of the function f of x. And we have 0, 3, either from the table or from the ordered pair. X is 3, x is 0, y is 3. 1, 5, 5 is right here, then 2, 7, 3, 9, 4, 11. So then we connect all these using a straight line. So for every point on the line, there is an input value and an output value connected. So that's how it works. Let us take a closer look at the graph of the function y is equal to f of x, either y or f of x equal to 2x plus 3. So I'm going to use, last time we used a graphing calculator to graph the same. This time we are going to use the online graphing calculator, GeoGebra. First I'm going to type in my function, which is y is equal to 2x plus 3. So we got the graph. Let me have our points 0, 3, then 1, 5, then 2, 7, then 3, 9, and the last one that we had 4, 11. Okay, by itself it gave names for the points A, B, C, D, E. So now what we are going to see is, let us take the function back again. The function what we had is (2x plus 3). So f of x is equal to 2x plus 3. In this function, see what is the importance of the numbers 2 and 3. So look at this 3. This 3 refers to this number right there, this 3. If you look at the coordinates, it is 0, 3. So this is the point where the line, the graph of the function, meets the y-axis. Y-axis is this, and the line is the one which is green. So this is called the point of intersection between the y-axis and the graph of the line, graph of the function. So we call this as the y-intercept. So which is 3. You could also write this as ordered pair 0, 3. And the number 2, what is this? So let me change the color of my pen because this is the second one. So now look at, let us take from B to C. See, B is our point 1, 5. C is a point 2, 7. So if you move from B to C, see, you could see from this point B to C, you could draw this step. Then also same way you could do from C to D, then D to E. We could have the same thing from A to B. So what you really see is all these steps are same in the size. So how do you know same in the size? Let us see, they go up, see each one goes up by 5 to 6, 6 to 7, so it goes 2 boxes. Then this one is 1 to 2. Again from C to D it is from 7 to 8, 8 to 9, so that is 2 boxes up. Then the X is 2 to 3, that is 1 box to the right. Then D to E, 2 box up, 1 box. So every time it is 2 units up, 1 unit over. So we write this one as 2 units up, 1 unit over. So we call this is the slope. So slope is 2 over 1. 2 over 1 is nothing but 2. So this is what this 2 is. So now we know the significance of the 2 number that we use in our graph. So the number without x we call as constant term. That is our y-intercept. The number with the x we call it as coefficient of x. So that represents the slope of the function. And slope, you know, that is rise over run. So every time how many units it goes up and how many units it goes down. So we call this as rise over run, which is the slope. And look at the rise. For example, when you go from C to D, it goes from, the rise is from 7 to 9. So the rise is 7 to 9, which is 2 units. So the rise really calculated from y difference of the y coordinate. And the run is, see, the run is 1 unit, is from 2 to 3. So the run is calculated as difference of x coordinate, which is x2 minus x1. So now if you know 2 points, one of them is x1 y1, the other one is x2 y2, then you could find the slope, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We also call this as the y2 minus y1 is change in y, and x2 minus x1 is the change in the input value, which is x. So we call this as rate of change. So slope and rate of change more or less same, but in case of rate of change we have to attach the units. So this one is 2 units. For every 2 boxes up, you go 1 box to the right. So or 2 units up, 1 unit right. So in a real world scenario, this has different meaning. So it depends on what kind of situation scenario we have to attach the units. So a quick review of what we have seen so far. For any real function of the form fx is equal to mx plus b, the y-intercept is b, which can be written as 0, b. B is a constant term in f of x is equal to mx plus b, and the slope is m, which is rise. Okay, m is a letter we use to represent slope. The formula is rise over run, and also it can be written as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So m is the coefficient of x term in f of x is equal to mx plus b. So you should know how to identify your m and b from the function given. So it comes from directly from this. So now let us see the graph of this. See, first you use your y-intercept, which is b. B is a number on the y-axis. Take that point. From this point you use your slope, which is rise over run. So you go up and down, depends on whatever the m says. So rise over run, you keep using the same units and you get more points. You connect all those. I'm doing approximately what it is. So it is m over 1 every time, m over 1. So this how it is easy to draw graph of a linear function once if you know these two numbers. What is slope and what is y-intercept. So now let us compare these with our fitness center problem we solved in our last segment. So if you remember, we had a fitness center that provides packages for students, adults, family with 2 adults, family with single parent. We are just focusing on the adult package where the joining fee was $40 and the monthly fee was $40. We really wrote a function to represent this monthly cost. We had the function which is adult membership cost of x is equal to 40 plus 40x. Here the x represents the number of months. So last time we drew the graph using a calculator. Now let us do it manually. So we have to compare this function with our general linear function, which is f of x is equal to mx plus b. We have to identify values of y-intercept and the slope by comparing these two. So what is the y-intercept? See, y-intercept is b. B goes here. See, don't compare these two because this has a x. So you have to compare b with this. See, b is a constant term. So your y-intercept is b, which is 40. So it is actually, if you write as an ordered pair, it is 0, 40. And then your slope comes from the x term. So x term compares to mx and 40. Let me highlight and show you little. So you have to compare even with the sign. It's very important. Same way with the b also you have to compare with the sign. See here 40 was for positive, so we get for positive 40. If there is a negative sign, you have to pick the negative sign along with the value. So now here mx, instead of mx we have 40 positive 40x. So the slope is really 40. we skip the x. And you immediately you write this as a fraction. So 40 is written as 40 over 1. So now your rise is 40 and your run is 1. And in this case, it is $40 for every month. So this is what the rate of change. When you attach the units, that will become a rate of change. Slope is 40 and the rate of change is $40 for every month. So now we could draw the graph. And also the slope gives you the scale for the graph. See, on x-axis every box moves by 1 month, and on y-axis every box moves by $40. So that tells us that, so 0 month, 1, 2, 3, and this one is $40, $80 every time you move by 120, 160, and so on. So now we know the y-intercept is 40, so I am going to 40 on y-axis, then my slope is 40 over 1, so it is 40 units up, so $40 up and $1, 1 month. So this is the second point. So again 40 up 1 month, $40 up 1 month, so I have more points. So all I have to do is I have to connect this. In this case, connection really doesn't, we don't have to connect here, but we just connect to represent better, to have a better look of the graph. Every dot has a meaning. The points in between the dots has no meaning to the scenario. So now this is we connected mathematical terms with the scenario. Now we know each number means what, and we know how to, using those numbers, we know how to draw the graph without even a table of values. It's quick now. So now let us practice on how we could use these techniques to draw graphs once if we know the function. So most of the time they use y and f of x interchangeably. So y is equal to negative 4x plus 5 is same as f of x is equal to negative 4x plus 5. Now we are seeing some examples. So graph each following function using its slope and y-intercept. So we have y is equal to negative 4x plus 5. First thing, what is the y-intercept? So if you compare this with mx plus b, our b is 5 and our mx is negative 4x, therefore m is negative 4. We write negative 4 as negative 4 over 1. See, because the negative sign goes with the numerator, and that is your rise. Rise is because negative, it goes down 3 and over 1. So you start at 5. See, 5 is right here. You go down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 over. Then again, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, then 1 over. Again, so having more number of points will help you avoid mistakes. Now this is the graph of the part A. We could use the same graph to draw the second one. If you compare this one, let me change the color. So here this is mx plus b. So our b stands for negative 1 and mx is 2/3 x, so your m is 2/3. So you go to 0, negative 1 on y-axis, which is right here. Then this is 2/3 positive. This is already a fraction, so we don't have to write as a fraction. It's now it is 2 units up, 3 units over. From this point you go 2 units up, 3 over. See, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Then 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So you could do multiple times. And now if you want to have more points this side, you have to do the reverse. Instead of 2 up, 3 over, you could go 2 down, 3 to the left, because you have to keep up a straight line. So it is 2 down, 3 over. So now we have the straight line. So this is the graph of B. Let us do couple of more examples before we finish the lesson. So now there are a variety of ways students get confused. That's why I'm doing these two. See, now you see y is equal to negative x. See, we have to compare this with mx plus b. See, x term is still there. So your slope is obviously, see, x is x, negative. So what is m? Basically there is negative 1. So it is negative 1x. So it is, m is just negative 1. The x you have to skip. Then b, see, there is no b. See, a term to be added is not there, so you have to add 0. So b is 0. So now you have to go to 0, 0 on y-axis. Then negative 1 as a fraction is negative 1 over 1. So now this is negative 1, 1 down, and 1 over. So from here, 1 down, 1 over, 1 down, 1 over. So we have as many points as we want. And if you want to do some points over here, since there are 1 down, 1 over to the right, you go 1 up, 1 to the left. So we had more points. So connect these. The second one, let me change a different color. So now if you compare this with mx plus b, see this number, we need two terms, but we have only one, that one has no x. So this has to be a constant term, that is b. Mx term is missing, so this has to be 0. The whole thing is 0. Therefore, see, x cannot be 0 because that's the input value. In this case, we can say m is 0. M is 0 and b is negative 1 over 2. So the students get confused. Looking this as a fraction, they think this is the slope. No, this is just because there is no x, this is the constant term. So you have to go negative half on y-axis. So negative half is right here. Then the slope is actually 0. It means you don't go up or down. It is 0 over 5 or 0 over 4, whatever the number you take at the bottom. So you don't go up or down, you just keep going to the right or left. So you just stay there at negative half, you go to the right at the same level or left at the same level. So basically this is a horizontal line. So this is the graph of D and this is the graph of, the other one is the graph of C. So most probably we have seen all the different kind of questions that will help you to do these kind of questions. So now I'm giving you some practice problems. You could try this for yourself and check your answer using a calculator, or you could go to the same GeoGebra website to check your answers. Again, thank you for watching this lesson. If you have any question or comment, this is my email address, so reach out to me. Thank you.